Is there a place in time where logic breaks down and wonderment begins? Could that be somewhere at some time along an infinite line between the reasonable and the highly unlikely? Join us on a journey into the improbable.
Makeshift Stories presents Episode 294, Elixir of Youth. Read by Carol Hume. Opening and closing theme by Matthew Erdman. Somewhere and sometime, reversing aging might come at the cost of youth. An older version of this story appeared in our feedback on January 15, 2022 as Lifeblood.
Dakari picked at his food with a silver fork, distracted by a new liver spot on the back of his 11-year-old hand. It hadn't been there a month ago. In the last week, the excruciating back pain started, and the finger joints on his right hand were swollen and arthritic. Mr. Camp's medical team had assured him the symptoms would disappear as soon as his body manufactured enough new something or other. They had explained the process and side effects in obscure technical terms, pointedly not bothering to translate them into something a kid from the Dharavi slums in Mumbai could comprehend. Despite that, Dakari understood enough to know his organs needed time to make the whatevers, the things Mr. Camp's aging body required. They were why Camp was paying his family enough money to lift them out of the slums and why he was here. Dakari winced as he tried to close his right hand around the fork. "Eat up, boy," Mr. Camp encouraged. Did the 89-year-old look any better? He wasn't quite as stooped, and the limp he had noticed when they first met was almost gone. "What goes into you goes into me, and I only want the best." The old man had gotten into the habit of checking on him every morning to ensure Dakari was sticking to the diet his consultants had prescribed. He stretched his arms and back, watching the boy trying to avoid bits of artichoke on his plate. "They're called artichokes, full of fiber, calcium, iron, phosphorus, and potassium. Everything my body needs. You've got to eat them. It's part of the contract." The threat was implicit. Follow the instructions exactly, or the old geezer will pull out of the agreement, send Dakari and his family back to the slums, and then look for another kid. Dakari put down his fork. "I don't like the arty things." "Eat it anyway," Camp demanded, and got up. "I'll see you in the clinic in 10 minutes. That plate had better be cleaned before then." The clinic was on the second floor of the sprawling villa overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. Through its big windows, Dakari liked to watch the rollers come in and dream of sailing, which Camp had claimed was too dangerous for the boy ever to do. There were far too many things the old curmudgeon deemed too risky. A private tutor schooled Dakari, and he played with carefully screened kids who couldn't come over if they had even a hint of a sniffle. He could only bike on the villa's grounds on a specially made trail, swim in the pool when the lifeguard was on duty, and play non-contact sports. Dakari was surprised the staff didn't keep him rolled up in plastic bubble wrap. He hesitated at the clinic's open door. The technicians were set up and ready to go. 2 side-by-side inclined beds connected by tubes, pumps, and beeping electronics were positioned in the middle of the room and angled so a person lying on them could look out of the large windows facing the sea. The process took several hours a day, so Camp had ensured the clinic felt more like a health spa than a hospital. However, even his money couldn't disguise the rack of complicated machines and monitors. One of the technicians, a thin woman with dark hair and friendly eyes in a lab coat, noticed Dakari watching them from the door. "Hi, Dakari, come on in. We're ready for you." Eva motioned him over to one of the beds. "Mr. Camp will be here soon, so we should get you hooked up." "No, I just need a few minutes," Dakari protested. "You know how angry he gets if we're not ready," Eva reminded. "Plus, I've got a treat for you if you follow all our instructions today." Dakari liked the woman. She was the only staff member who treated him like a human rather than a source of material to keep their employer alive. The other techs avoided talking to him. Eva was different, and he was glad she was here today. Reluctantly, Dakari climbed on the right bed. "Thank you," Eva smiled. She nodded to the other tech, who began switching on machines. "You know the drill, Dakari. Please give me your arm." Dakari reluctantly let his left arm flop to his side, palm up, exposing the place where two capped shunts had been surgically implanted in the main artery and vein. With practiced ease, Eva removed the elastic bandage protecting them, then connected two clear plastic tubes running from Dakari's arm into the machinery rack. "I'm here. Good, you've started. Let's get going." Dakari tensed at the old man's voice. "Dakari, remember to relax. This goes faster if you're not tensed up," Eva encouraged. "Quick, I've got a meeting, and I want to feel that young blood coursing through my veins before it," Camp demanded, walking confidently into the clinic, throwing himself down on the open bed and rolling up his sleeve. The other technician immediately hooked up tubes to a pair of shunts in his right forearm. "Well, what are you waiting for? Let's start," he demanded. "I've only got a few hours and need time to prepare for my meeting." The old man lay his head back and stared at a flat screen installed in the ceiling. A technician turned it on and stock prices began scrolling down. Eva smiled assuringly at Dakari, then opened the valves attached to his shunts. His young red blood rushed down one tube into the bowels of the machinery before racing up another into Camp's arm. It pushed Camp's dark, sickly fluid back up the second tube through the machines and into Dakari's arm. The tired old cells invaded Dakari, bringing with them the corruption of age to eat away at his heart, lungs, joints, and skin. Dakari understood that his body reacted by making stuff, the elixir of life, something only a young person could make. Once refreshed by Dakari, the machines pumped it back into Camp. Every couple of days, the process repeated. Before his parents had agreed to let him become a donor, Camp's representatives had explained the process. Anti-senescence researchers found that connecting the circulatory systems of younger and older mice could arrest and ultimately reverse aging. Camp's medical staff referred to the process as parabiosis and had altered it to, in theory, work on humans. However, they did not completely understand the mechanism behind it. The catch was genetic compatibility. Apparently, Dakari was the perfect match, a 1 in 100 million. He suddenly felt revolted at the thought of the old man's blood flowing through him and began to squirm. "Dakari, please stop!" Eva placed her hand on the boy's left arm. "You'll pull the tubes out." Dakari tried to twist away. "Remember, I've got a treat for you today if you're good." She gave his arm a gentle squeeze. In an attempt to forget where he was, Dakari focused on the big windows. Outside, sailboats slowly drifted in and out of the exclusive marina across the bay. He imagined being on one, sailing on the ocean, free to go anywhere. But anxiety sucked him back into the room. Was the transfusion taking longer than usual? Were cancerous cells from the old man lodging in his body? "I don't want to do this again," he pleaded when Eva finally disconnected the tubes from his arm. Dakari winced in pain as he propped himself up on his elbows. The old man, pumped full of his young blood, hopped up and stretched luxuriously. "You'll do it," Camp sneered, "because it's what your family needs you to do to keep them out of that pit I found all of you in. I'd call that a great deal for the inconvenience of a few hours of pain while your body rejuvenates my blood." He jumped off the transfer bed, rolled down his sleeves, straightened his clothes, and then walked out of the room with an exaggerated spring. "I can't do this again," Dakari muttered. Eva helped Dakari off the bed. "Do you need a wheelchair?" "No, I can do it," Dakari insisted. He stumbled but was determined to keep on his feet without help. "You were good today. Here's the gift I promised." Eva surreptitiously palmed him a small bag of candies, something he was not supposed to eat. He smiled, accepted the candies, and winced as he took a tentative step. "You look tired, Dakari. Is everything okay?" His mother interrogated the screen. The midday sun streamed through the windows behind her, partly silhouetting her face. "I'm fine, Mum. It's night here. I'm getting ready for bed," Dakari explained. "Are you sure? You look too pale and thin. Are they feeding you enough? Are the treatments making you sick?" she persisted. "I'm okay. Everything is going well. How's Dad, Yash, and Isha?" Dakari suspected they were being monitored, so he kept to safe topics. His mother moved closer to the screen as if it would help her see more. "I'm okay, really. I am." He assured her again and changed the subject. "What have you been up to?" Quite a bit. His mother's frown turned into a smile. Thanks to Mr. Camp. We're at the ocean in one of his resorts. It's been boiling here. They're saying it's another killer heat dome and could last all summer. It's good to get out of the city. And the resort, it's so lovely. Right on the ocean. We watch the sunset from the beach every day. Sounds great, Mom. He shifted in his seat, stifled a grimace, and tried to sound enthusiastic. But his hips were so sore after the last session that he could barely stand. I'm happy you're all doing so well. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. His mother leaned in even closer, so her face filled the camera. Are you sure? I'm living like a king, Mom, in a palace overlooking the sea. Everything is so clean and new here, see? He picked up the tablet and swung it around his room. It's a palace. I miss you, his mother whispered. I hope everything is going the way the doctors said it would. I wish you could be here with us. Me too. Dakari pointed the tablet at his window so his mother would see the ocean and not his face. Several days later, Dakari found himself on the villa's top floor where Camp's office was. He had been wandering around the complex when he noticed the fire escape was unlocked. The floor was out of bounds, but his curiosity overcame his fear of Camp's wrath. Taking his shoes off, Dakari tiptoed down an ornately decorated side hall, leading away from the fire escape. The marble floor was cool on the soles of his feet, kept spotless by a fleet of robotic cleaners, who avoided him like he was a piece of furniture as they worked to scrub away his sweaty footprints. Camp only permitted machines in his sanctum. The old man was secretive, to the point of paranoia, so none of the medical staff or the housekeepers were allowed on the floor. Yet Dakari could hear Camp talking to someone in muffled tones. Curious, he crept silently along the wall until he came to a T-junction, then carefully looked around the corner and into the vacant electric eyes of one of the service bots. He stumbled, jumped backwards, and knocked over a table, sending it crashing to the floor. The sound was deafening as it reverberated down the hall. What was that? Camp exclaimed. Someone scraped a chair across the floor, and footsteps began to echo down the hall. The only place Dakari could hide was a shallow alcove. Desperate, he slipped in and flattened himself tightly against the rough plaster wall, angling his feet so they wouldn't stick out. But the gesture would be useless if someone did more than look down the side passage. Dakari listened, hands shaking as the steps came closer and stopped. He did his best to flatten himself against the back of the shallow alcove. Sweat began to trickle down his back. The feet scuffled, stopped, and scuffled again, but they didn't enter the side passage. Hey, Larry, one of your bots knocked over a table. You should use people, not machines, up here, the man called back down the hall. Bots only do what they're programmed to do, Camp grunted. I don't trust people. So I'm okay with a bot occasionally knocking into something. It's a small price to pay for my privacy. The footsteps receded down the hall. Dakari waited until he couldn't hold his breath any longer, then exhaled. He used the sound of the service bot struggling to right the table to hide his movement and crept past the junction and down the hall. Camp and the man were talking again. The kid will last for another 3 to 4 years. My doctors say I can easily make it to 110 if we can keep up the treatments, so I need you to start looking for another match. What happens to the kid? The unknown man asked. One of the service bots turned on a floor waxer. Dakari couldn't hear the reply. I'm not going, Dakari shouted through the locked door of his room. You're going to forfeit your contract then. The muffled warning came from the other side. As soon as Dakari returned from his foray to the top floor, he had locked himself in. No one noticed or cared until the following day when an assistant came to get him for the next parabiosis session. You can't scare me, Dakari taunted. He can't replace me. I'm getting the master key, the guard threatened and stomped off. Dakari? Eva knocked gently on the door. Dakari, please let me in. I just want to talk. I won't take you to the clinic unless you agree. I'm not ever going to go again, he insisted. I don't understand why, Dakari. You've been doing so well, helping Mr. Camp and your family. That's a good thing, Eva encouraged. Dakari suddenly swung the door open. Except it's killing me. I've only got another 3 years, he cried. Eva pushed into the room, closed the door, and secured it. Where did you hear that? You recover within 2 days of treatment, and the effects are not cumulative. That's not true, he insisted, and then admitted to Eva that he had snuck onto the top floor and had overheard camp. You must have misunderstood, she assured. In 3 or 4 years, you'll be close to adulthood and your body stops growing. Parabiosis only works when the donor is young. It makes sense they'd have to look for someone else. You'll be through your contract. That's all. I'll be dead, Dakari insisted, tears rolling down his cheeks. No, Dakari, you'll be free to go home. Look, I'll make some discreet inquiries, but I can assure you I'm right. Eva took a clean cloth, handed it to the boy, and waited while Dakari wiped his tears away. Feel better? Dakari nodded feebly, but he had heard what he had heard. Eva was wrong. Okay then, let's get to the clinic before Mr. Camp loses patience. Eva took the boy's hand and led him from the room. 4 hours later, Dakari lay on his bed, head propped up. Beyond the big windows, yachts lazily sailed across the bay. The session had ended an hour before, leaving him sicker than usual. Had Camp's medical staff changed something to siphon away his life even faster? Eva brought him a handheld to talk to his family, then left. Everything is going so well here, his mother beamed from a private patio. Yash ran up to the screen, butting in. New braces, see? I will have the best-looking teeth in Mumbai, and Dad got new glasses. And Mr. Camp said he will pay for Isha's college. Bye. Yash reached out and touched the device. The connection went dead, leaving Dakari staring at a blank tablet. Had he misunderstood what he had secretly overheard? When his family agreed to the contract, Camp had emphasized that he would set up a trust for them if he stayed until the doctors said they didn't need him. There was a knock at the door. Dakari? Eva whispered. Dakari, are you in there? Yes, he moaned. The door's not locked. He heard the latch turn as Eva came in and sat on the edge of his bed, looking distraught. Are you okay? He asked. Her face was clouded with concern and something else he had never seen before. Fear. I did some research, Dakari. I was wrong. Her voice quivered. I broke into files I'm not supposed to have access to. The research on mice suggests... Oh, Dakari, you're going to age too fast. You'll be an invalid before you're 16 and die of premature old age. Dakari clenched his fists. Then, I was right. But if I refuse to do it again? You might recover, or too much damage might have been done already. No one knows. Eva admitted, burying her head in her hands. There's no data on long-term effects if the treatments are stopped. But, what should I do? Big tears began to roll down the boy's face. I don't know, Eva said, taking one of Dakari's hands. I'll do what I can, I swear, but this is my last day. I quit. I can't be part of this. Dakari's back ached and his left shoulder throbbed. The last hour spent tucked into a ball in a recycle bin hadn't helped, and he wasn't sure how much longer he could stay still. Eva had assured him the bins were always moved to the street for collection at 3 in the afternoon. He had reluctantly done the morning session, so no one should miss him for another 2 days. Dakari barely repressed a scream when his sore shoulder suddenly impacted the hard plastic side as the bin was loaded onto a cart. The engine of a small garden tractor choked to life, and the bin began to rattle. Dakari waited until he couldn't hear the machine, waited another few minutes, and then dug himself out of the bin. Dropping down into the service lane behind the villa, he looked around. Seeing no one, he began to limp away. He disappeared a few hours ago. They think he hid in one of the trash cans to get through security, an interpreter repeated in English. Eva wasn't fluent in French. Dakari hadn't known that. Everyone at Camp's villa spoke in English. He was hiding across the street from her modest apartment. She had expected the authorities to show up, just not so fast. It put a monkey wrench into their plan. I haven't seen him since I left the villa. Why would he show up here? The kid doesn't know where I live, she explained, eyes darting around the street. Did Camp's security know about their arrangement? We'll leave an officer here in case he shows up, the lead security guard said. There's no need to. Really, if the boy comes here, I'll make him stay, then call you, Eva assured. The guard shook his head. Mr. Camp insists we post someone here. A burly man detached from the group and took position on the street outside Eva's apartment. Dakari settled down behind a hedge to wait. Sometime after midnight, a car pulled up and idled. The sound of its door slamming woke Dakari. He was cold, and it had started to rain. No luck, the guard said to his replacement. The local police are looking for the kid. He'll show up somewhere. An 11-year-old from India in a French village who can't speak the language won't go long without being unnoticed. But Camp still wants us here until the kid is found. Dakari stretched out his stiff muscles, pushing aside a branch to see. The two guards were talking beside a dark sedan with a private security firm's logo on its door. Eva hadn't been outside since the guards arrived. He began to shiver. There was no way he was going to be able to contact her. 2 days later, he was standing, staring at the elaborate iron villa gate, shivering in the rain, rubbing the bandage covering the shunts in his arm. Raindrops dripped from his chin. He was desperate. Had Camp told his family? Had the old man cut them off already? Finally mustering his resolve, his hand began to reach out to the intercom. Dakari! A familiar, concerned voice came from the window of a cab hidden in the shadows on the other side of the lane. You don't have to do this. You have a choice. Come with me. Dakari stared at the new wrinkles on the back of his hand and remembered the joy in his mother's voice. Could he do the right thing? Could he go through with it? Dakari, quick, get in. Someone's coming. He stood, frozen to the spot, unable to decide, until a hand grabbed his wrist and began dragging him away.
You can help us create original content twice a month by heading over to ko-fi.com/makeshiftstories and making a one-time donation, or becoming an ongoing supporter at patreon.com/makeshiftstories. And if you can, please leave us a review or rating wherever you're listening to the podcast. It helps new listeners discover us. If you'd like to connect with us, please send an email to makeshiftstories@gmail.com. or visit our website at makeshiftstories.com. Links to both are in the show notes. Makeshift Stories is released around the beginning and middle of the month. This month's story was written by Alan V. Hare and read by Carol Hume. Opening and closing themes were composed and recorded by Matthew Erdman. Audio production and editing by Vakata Studios. Makeshift Stories is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial Attribution, no derivative license.